Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Saturday, September 13th. I am doing this voiceover before I make the rest of this video tomorrow. I've looked into a few other things. I've seen the video of Charlie Kirk being shot. In fact, I just somehow passed over Facebook, and there was a video of some kind of mechanical, like just a thing there. Don't be fooled. They killed the character Charlie Kirk, but the actor's still alive. I'm not going to watch the video, but they're saying that there's some kind of thing there, some kind of shenanigans. And I have some more thoughts about his wife and this stuff to do with Israel and these other things. But before I get to all that, there's something that most people in the truth community, I don't know how many of you guys already know this or have actually thought about this, but most people don't. Probably a very small percentage actually are aware of this or even have thought about this. When you go away from the official story, when you don't accept the official narrative about one thing or everything or whatever it might be, you're never going to get the validation and the truth in the sense of some concrete truth, because there's only one authority that can validate the truth in our society, right? So the official story comes from an authority of governmental mainstream media, whatever it is, right? This is the truth. This is the story. This is what they say the truth is. They have the authority to say this is the truth, right? And search engines and now AI bots and AI programs all value this authority and their truth as the truth. Everything else is some, alternative, non-validatable. It's not being validated and it won't be validated by the authority. Opinion-based, doesn't matter how many people believe it or not. Conspiracy theory or something like that, right? It's something that is illegitimate. You now have a bastard reality, right? You have an illegitimate reality, an illegitimate understanding of what's going on in terms of the story. So you think or somewhere in between those two things, mostly that you think, your opinion is that the official story is something wrong with it. But maybe you don't know how much is. Like maybe some of it's truth, maybe some of it isn't. So maybe it started off being organic and then turned to something else, right? And then you're out there in the world of disinformation and dumbasses and disinformation agents, and the powers that be have their own disinformation out there, and all this crap that's out there, and you're trying to piece it together and figure out what the truth is. And as soon as you start thinking that you need a concrete truth, you need some validatable truth, you're fucked, because you're never going to get that, right? You're never going to get this stamp of approval from the official story. You're not going to reverse the people that run the system. They're not going to come out and say something about COVID or something about 9/11 or something about Pizzagate or something about any of these things. They're never going to say, hey, you were right all along. Maybe in 60 years, maybe, and like this, they did this with Operation Ajax when the CIA deposed this guy Mossadegh in Iran, and then 60 years later they admitted to it, right? Like it was over 60 years. Most people who are there, there and knew what was going on at the time. Like if you were a 20-year-old and you saw what was going on, then you'd feel some sense of relief. But almost everybody else is too young to really understand it, and you'd be 80 years old right now, or whatever. When they, you'd be 80 when they finally admitted to something, and usually it takes longer than that. And so maybe some part of the future they'll be admitting some of these things, but there's historical lies in our history, misrepresentation of the truth, stories where villains are cast as heroes and heroes are cast as villains, and the oppressed people are villainized and the people who bullied the oppressed people are memorialized, right? So these things, I mean, in terms of any of those the official story, the validation, the beast, the powers that run the system, it's worthless, because they have a long track record of putting out things that are categorically untrue and unfair and, things that are just wrong on every fucking level. And so a long time ago, I don't accept the official story, which you guys all know. Pretty much everybody watches my channel, that's the case. But as I scrolled through the many comments I got that I hadn't answered the comments in like 2 days. And so I had three videos that were heavily commented on. And then whatever else I'm seeing on social media. I mean, like I said, I just saw something on Facebook. There's all these theories out there. Like, I heard so many different theories from so many different people. And I'm sure, if you're going from video to video and going from comment to comment, you're going on whatever different places you go and, this kind of stuff is discussed. You're hearing all these different theories, and you're never going to be able to pick one. I mean, you can personally pick one, but it doesn't really matter because you're never going to fucking know. Like, you're never going to actually know what happened. Is Charlie Kirk somehow still alive? Like I said, I don't even know I was on Facebook. Maybe I closed something next to Facebook and it moved over to this. This could be true, but I also believe they aren't afraid to sacrifice a human being in front of us either. I don't claim to know everything. I have a curious mind. This is a person, one of the first people on Facebook. Her and her husband were going around. They were like semi-truthers. This is back 2011, 2012. So this has been years ago. This is one of the first people I was friends with. I never interacted with her and her husband, but they were going from national, campgrounds where you can camp for free, but there's nobody monitoring these campgrounds, and all these people go there and they were shot at, and they thought the world was ending. Anyways, don't be fooled. They killed the character Charlie Kirk, but not the actor. There's a couple of pictures of some guy being in some kind of a vest and blood spurting out of some machine, which would be the next level for them when they, with the whole thing with Trump, right? If it's fake, and I'm not saying it is, like I said, I don't know and I'll never know. I don't care about knowing this stuff. I get a sense of it. I know we're being worked. I know how we're being manipulated. I know what their goals, some of their goals are, not all their goals. But, I don't feel like it's my job or my concern to go in there and try to figure out all the details because, like I said, it's never going to be what people call the truth in air quotes, right? Because the validatable truth has to come through some authority. And the authority I don't trust at all on every level. Even if they were trying to tell the truth, they can't. The whole system is a deception. And so, going down the rabbit hole and trying to figure all this stuff out is just, worthless. People think they have to know. But you're just going to go from one theory to the next. And, I've seen this since 9/11, 2005 and 6, when that became like a free-for-all. And people warring with each other in the truth community, each person saying, the number of comments I got where people are like, hey, I know what's going on and you don't. And, yeah, nobody does. Because, only if you accept the official story, and you are comfortable with that and you don't have any doubts, will you have any kind of resolution because they're the authority. Whatever they say is validated by the fact that they're the people that, control a system and the narratives in that system. But once you leave that, you leave behind the authority, then you're just going to be trying to figure out, what you need to know and manage your life based in that. Because, getting the truth from these criminal liars, you'll never do that. They're never going to admit to anything. They're never going to, even if they admit to something, it would be, could you believe them, right? So, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein, I said this about him and the rest of it, they like to leave things completely unresolved. And in fact, I don't think they mind that there's alternative media and alternative viewpoints about this stuff because, for them, it just means more confusion, more distraction. I mean, the truth community has added layers and layers of distraction, layers and layers of people being obsessed with things that mean nothing to them. And they can throw out a distraction, and then people will just create their own universes within that distraction. And before you know it, people are completely not focused on the last thing, the Jeffrey Epstein, that was a distraction in the first place in many ways or something else. And so, trying to figure it out is silly. I mean, you can figure it out what you need to know and what you need to to gather from these things. But other than that, like, it's just, it doesn't, you'll never get to the bottom of it. There are people saying that the guys around Charlie Kirk were throwing up hand signals, and I'm going to get into what he was saying at the time he was shot, because there's a lot of suspicious things. I'm going to find his wife's Instagram and see, some of the stuff that's on that, because she's, seems to be she was acting, she was going in pretty hard, and like that statement that whatever the fuck that thing she did yesterday might cover it. So the thing's pretty fucked, and I think most of you guys see that. Anyways, let me wrap this up here. I'm getting tired, but I'll continue on with this tomorrow, this idea, as I, comb through the rubble of this, bullshit story. Okay, Sunday, September 14th. So this occurred to me last night, and it's being kind of confirmed to me today, unless they're waiting till Monday to roll out some more details about this guy. It seems that they've evolved the development of a profile and a storyline. A manifesto, if we looked at the last couple of guys, the guy with the Trump guy, and Luigi Mangione. The Trump guy, I don't even remember his name. Like, I don't think anybody remembers his name. The guy who was the patsy for the Trump assassination. And, they can say whatever they want about these creations, these characters that they create. And they said almost nothing about him. We don't know whether he was a Democrat or Republican even. We don't know why he shot Trump. Like, there's no real, according to official story, it's like the ketchup gate. The whole thing is, fake, but we don't know why he shot Trump, right? And then Luigi Mangione, there was some details and information about him, but, there's a manhunt for like a week, whatever, that went on for a long time. And there was some information, and he had like an outburst in court, and, whatever, the thing he said. There's a few instances, and then they disappeared him. And so before they would have, the manifestos, and there would be a understanding of the person's motivation. And in this case, with this guy, with the Charlie Kirk guy, Tyler Robinson, I don't think they're going to give you anything. And the reason would be that the left can make up whatever storyline that they want to make up. And it's going to be about guns and the availability of guns and how that has to be taken away from people. And the right can blame the liberal community. And it just furthers the divide, right? Like I was talking about yesterday with the idea of these stories and the perception of reality. By not addressing any details about this guy. So far, they've released a little bit of information. I'll show you a couple of videos. And this was a quiet kid who did well in school. According to this is the profile they've given. And he wouldn't talk to you unless you talked to him. It was an introvert. And came from a rich family, and he didn't seem to have any trouble. And then in 2 months he was radicalized, right? And Fox News is really pushing this idea. The left had pushed it before, that by saying things on the internet, you can make people do stupid shit, and somehow you're accountable for that. They pushed it with Trump in the January 6th and all the things before it. And Trump and his people have been pushing it now with the liberal, the Antifa people and the liberal, whatever that is, that they're being radicalized. And, it discounts any personal responsibility that people should know better than to get a high-powered sniper rifle and go up on a roof and shoot somebody. Again, this is all official story stuff that I don't believe in any of it, right? But what I do believe that we can prove is that these events are used to move people in one direction or another, right? They are events that are there for you. They're not there for the people that are involved or engaged in them, the families or whatever it is. This is about moving people in, any of these public type of big news events, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be just assassination things. They're there for you to make decisions and push you and play on your emotional play your emotional strings, pull your emotional strings and things like this, and affect you in some way, right? And for this thing, they want to say by liberals posting things like we saw in my last video with Jeffrey Walter, where a bunch of people like AOC and a bunch of dopes like that said Trump is a fascist. And this 19-year-old kid saw those people, which of course he didn't. Because, maybe he doesn't even know who half of those people are or all of them. And that this kid, whatever, 22-year-old kid, saw them. And then in 2 weeks became radicalized as a left-wing crazy and decided to go up on this roof and shoot somebody. Like that's, it just doesn't happen like that, right? And so there has to be there's always, first of all, medication, which nobody wants to address because that would involve Pfizer and these big pharma corporations. But you see that most of these medications, and when RFK Jr. has talked about medications, he's slammed, right, in terms of the mass shootings. But these medications have, ideation. They can make people murderous. They have an unbelievable, powerful effect on people. And then, not just medication, but self-medication. Violent video games. That's the violence in our culture altogether. There's a lot of violence in our culture, from football to comic books to movies to, there's violence, porn, and then the video games are very graphic and all those things. And so the lack of a connection to God, other psychological issues that people have, young people, whatever it is. So if these things were true, these lone gunman stories, then all these things would have to be taken into consideration because, they're all factors. You can't blame some guy watched one video or he heard one person say, what means, call Trump a fascist. And that was enough for the guy, it doesn't, you have to look at a person, everything they experienced in their life, all the things that led them up to that point, right? Military training would be a big thing. Someone who had PTSD and had assassinated a lot of people in the past. Assassination of this nature would be, it was a 2,000-yard shot, and whatever, and I guess the scope was quite the gun that was shown was very suspect. There were some comments about that, right? And so, like I said in the first voiceover, you're never going to figure it out. Like, there's too many factors and, whatever. You never really know why people do shit, right? So, like, let's say this was a legitimate story. This kid did it. And you'd never get to the bottom of it. And there's, everyone wants to cast blame. But the reality of it is our society's fucked, which I said before. And we're in a state, and this is why I want to do this voiceover. We're in a state of prolonged collapse. And one of the things I learned from the Sajmark teaching, that you have a bank of pain when you come into your, you also have like a bank of love, right? You have these things. You have assets and you have things you're going to have to deal with. You have difficult things that you're going to have to deal with in your life. Illnesses, deaths, all kinds of these issues, right? Conflicts. You have these things in your samskaric pattern. You're born with these, these things that you're going to have to endure. And some of the things we're going to have to all endure together. And along with that, whenever you seek pleasure, we have a pleasure-based society. The third master of the Sajmark systems, Master Charji, used to always say that, if you want one side of the coin, you're going to have to get the other. And he always talked about pleasure and pain specifically for America. Because in America, we are very hedonistic, pleasure-seeking people. And people think that you can be happy all the time, but it's silly because happiness is defined by sadness. Happiness is defined by feeling badly, like unhappiness, right? Like there's, you can't feel happy unless you have a contrast. If you're happy every day, then you don't feel anything because that's your state, right? If there was no unhappiness, you would never know happiness. And so, which is a very interesting concept that people don't really understand, right? That you need the opposite of something to really just experience you need pain to feel pleasure, right? That's why there's sadomasochistic people, all these kind of things. And so the interesting thing about it was he said that you're going to have to experience some of these things, and it's better off to get them out of your way when you're young, when you have a strong life force and you have a strong, physical body. That when you're young to go through these things that you have to endure. But people push them back, to they don't want to experience these things, and you have a way of people can push back the pain and the will it away, and then just have to experience all at once, and that's why people die very poorly, because they just get into the state where all the pain that they have pushed away has to be experienced all at once. And then collectively, to my understanding, the people who I call the controllers have more or less hijacked this planet and are holding it hostage, saying that they'll destroy it, which will cause, difficulties within the universe. And they're bargaining with these, powerful souls that administer God's will. There's this sort of, like this bargaining going on. And, and there's other reasons and other things about why there's been a delay. Like there could have been nuclear war in 1980. That was kind of scheduled for the it got pushed back. And so, we're in this sort of situation where we should have collapsed. Our society should have collapsed years ago. But for whatever reason, it's been pushed back. And so there's a feeling that people have, it's like, reality should have been different right now. Like we should be, it's almost like people are walking in a sort of a stupor, like a dreamlike state, because there's this inevitable shit that's going to go down, and it's just being delayed as much as possible. And that's what the people who control the system are doing, delaying the inevitable, because God's will has to be done. There has to be a correction here. There has been deviant behaviors and attitudes by the dominant species in human beings, and it has to be corrected, right? And so, that's why when I'm talking about these things, like it doesn't matter, like getting to the bottom of the Charlie Kirk thing. What people have in the truth community is you realize you've been duped and lied to. You realize you've been like manipulated, and you're like, I'm not going to get fooled again. But now they have secondary ways. There's the initial story that they show you, and you're like, I'm not buying into that shit. But then they have a way to, that's not the manipulation. It's the next thing. Like it's stage 2. Like it's the next set of lies and manipulation, right? I remember my dad. We were going into a gas station. My dad was a real like incompetent person, and we're going into a gas station. I'm a little kid. I don't know, old enough to kind of realize that my dad was like a boob, like a moron. And he goes into the gas station. He goes, like a car was getting fixed, and my dad goes, "You're not going to take advantage of me. I'm on to you. I'm on to you. Don't try to screw me over. I'm on to you." And I looked at the mechanic, and I'm like, "You just, the guy knows that you don't know shit about cars, and he can tell you what." Like, my dad saying that made it easy. If the guy wanted to screw him over, my dad made it real easy for him. Because, like, you'd have to know what prices the parts cost. And, I mean, you could go in there and they can show you the work, and you can, I mean, like, you can have knowledge so they know not to screw you over. But my dad just demonstrated he didn't know shit. Like, I was a little kid. I'm like, now you're totally going to get screwed over. Like, you just, so, and I think there's a lot of people in the truth community are like that. Oh, you're not going to fool me again. But then they get sucked in because they know how to play on your emotions. And now it's not the first story. You see through the first official story, and they probably make it so it's obvious. Just like this kid left all this evidence behind. They leave enough clues and things. But then, like, they're still manipulating you, and you don't even know it. Like, they want you to react this way. The truth community and the various, the truth community isn't anything now. It's just a bunch of people who don't believe in the official story, who all are, in their emotions and being manipulated and played by the powers that be. Otherwise Trump wouldn't be president right now, right? So, It's just, and or Biden wouldn't have been. I mean, it's just like, there's people who think Biden was great, and there's lots of people who think Trump is great. And so, like, that's all you need to know. And it's just that they, like, you're never going to find the negative truth. They're never going to, the bottom line is we have a failing society and a bunch of desperate people trying to control something they can't control anymore. And we're just waiting for the collapse of this, this system. And when it collapses, we're all going to have to figure out how to survive in a world where the system we used to be 100% dependent on no longer exists or is no longer intact. Anyways, let's get into the stuff here. Okay, so let's start here. I'm not going to show you him actually getting shot, but
do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Okay, so that's right where he gets shot. So right after that is when he gets shot. And they don't show you it here. I don't think they're showing it on YouTube. I saw it somewhere else. And, you see blood coming out of his, now anything could be AI generated and, they can fake any kind of deep fake thing. But if this was a fake, it's much more sophisticated than anything else we have ever seen. Where you see him actually, slump over and there's blood gushing out of, like, it's like he got shot, like, right here by the neck area. This area here. And so, but what I want to talk about here is that they were talking about gun violence. Now, I had heard that he was talking about transgender stuff when he got shot. That's the first thing I had heard. But it's clear from the the video I saw where he's actually, they show him getting shot, that he's talking about gun violence, which, there's two major kind of coincidences, right? One in which the photo or the book of Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book, it's not just about Trump. There's information about it, which I showed you yesterday, of all these wealthy, high-ranking business people and, whoever they are, Jeffrey Epstein associates, people that Jeffrey Epstein would take notice of, people with, power and money and things, are basically acknowledging that they all know that Jeffrey Epstein was a creep and he was committing crimes, that he was a human trafficker, and that he was engaged with these young girls. Like, they all knew. So if they knew, Trump knew, right? Because the only thing that Trump could claim is that nobody knew. Like, that he did know Jeffrey Epstein well enough, and Jeffrey Epstein wasn't telling everybody. Like, he was hiding his proclivities, right? That he didn't want people to know what he was doing was criminal. But if he was just doing this out in the open, now this is a billionaire, then everybody he knew could blackmail him or manipulate him because of the crimes he was committing, right? It would be easy to document it. It would be easy for these people in Jeffrey Epstein's circle to get some of these girls and use them as witnesses, right? Get their stories, and then just have it, like, just, they could wear a wire, they could do anything, they could manipulate him, right? They could, then blackmail Jeffrey Epstein and say, this is what we're going to release to the police. But he was doing it in broad daylight, like, not worried at all of being criminally prosecuted. And the bigger thing that came with that was Trump's letter that he said never existed was in Jeffrey Epstein's book. And his whole denial, he lied to the American people about this letter, and, this was bad for him. So it was a miracle that this Charlie Kirk thing happened right then to get people away from that story before it got legs. And we'll see how it all plays out from here. But this is, this worked out great for Trump. And so with that, now you have him talking about gun violence at the very moment. This is something that the left can use, right? That, that he was talking about gun violence and, ironically or, magically at that moment, his pushing back against this idea of mass shooting, and that his attitude towards it. At that moment, he gets shot like it's some sort of, again, these coincidences just always add up. Then there's all these guys giving hand signals and other thing behind them. I'm not going to show you all that because, like I said, whether this is real or fake or not, or whether it's whatever is going on here. I mean, there is things in the godly universe where there's irony and connectivity, but I don't think this is that. I think that this is purposefully being done. And then this guy's wife apparently. So let's move over to this. This is what they hate. Are you serious? This performative. This is what they hate. This is what they hate. This is why they did it. This is why he's, this idea that this thing is bigger than just. I don't know how many people actually hated this guy, Charlie Kirk, right? I don't know how the liberals felt about him. You got into these arguments. I think they probably would dislike Ben Shapiro even more. That Ben Shapiro would be, or any number of them, like Tucker Carlson, whatever. Like you go to these various liberal people. And I don't think Charlie Kirk was top of the list. And I don't think his family and his wife had anything to do with this. But that's this Republican idea that he had as a happy guy in a, storybook family. But my wife said that there's the Reddit post about this thing where she read Reddit about his wife here. And I'm going to revisit her in a bit too. That they were all thinking that she was so performative. So apparently she was a popular influencer in the Christian community. And that's when they got married, he took off. So she was already an influencer. You could tell from her, her speech and that thing she did with her hands was so creepy and so performative and so fake and so, unnecessary. And people were saying the same things that I was saying, that she didn't need to come out and do that. And she didn't, she could have waited and go through a real grieving process. But she's very fake. So one of my viewers just sent me a video about this, right? They have these things that spurt blood. And see, anything can be called fake. There's nothing that, if you're going to see something that's fake, it's going to be fake, right? That this, there's this patch here, and they had this thing, and the video that the person sent me, there's a photo of him having let me see, I'll just pull that thing up there here as well. And I'm not saying this is true, I don't know. I don't know. It looked realistic, but of course, they can fake anything in AI. This must have happened live, it had to happen live. And so, where is he now? That becomes is his marriage not even real? They're just a couple of actors, and what happens to those kids? And, they're just, it's all performance. What happens to him? He can't be seen with his wife, who's now going to be out there, his wife's going to be. I mean, she can't, she's chomping at the bits to go out there and be the main act. And, she's not going to let anybody forget about her husband. Fucking. And so, I mean, I don't know, it seems who's to say? What's really behind the story? You're never going to get to the bottom, like I said earlier. So here's her Instagram. But she is, people are seeing how perform, because they had to. It just didn't, it's not natural or organic or real grieving. It was so, staged, and the way that she was speaking, she reminds me of those, or the profile that she has is that it's like the Christian Barbie Truther, one of those, mean girls, one of those sorority girls that pretends to be Christian and nice, but is really judgmental and mean. She just has a hardness in her. You could see it in some of the stuff here. Here's but our Savior, our Lord, our God, He is good. I will never have the words ever. The sound of this widow weeping echoes throughout this world like a battle cry. I have no idea what any of this means, but baby, I know you do, and so does the Lord. They called each other baby, or she did, which is a weird thing. They have no idea what they just ignited within this wife. If they thought my husband's mission was big now, they have no idea. You, all of you will never, ever forget my husband. I'll make sure of it. Rest in the arms of the Lord, baby, as his blankets. You with words I know your heart always strive to hear. Well done, my good and faithful servant. So when you serve God, then everything that happens to you is coming from God. Good, bad, ugly. Like that's a truly godly person. A person who's working to connect with God. That's what you strive to achieve. That you don't become a victim of anything. You don't become, there's no mistakes that this is, you're what God wanted you to go through, right? And so, this idea that these other people are, whatever they are, evil, and that they somehow thwarted God's will, that God wanted Charlie Kirk alive, but they were over. This 22-year-old kid was able to overcome God's will and this guy's destiny, right? Silly. And that there's all these people who are, beyond this kid who are responsible for him dying. This thing, there's the casket here. So she posted this casket there, and then this thing where she did this.
I love you.
I love you. I know.
I love you.
I love you so much.
I love you. God bless you.
So who filmed this, right? Like there has to be stagecraft here. When you film that, there has to be stagecraft. There has to be people who you're instructing. You have to make sure you have the right angle. She got her nails done. Like fucking. I mean, like she's got perfect nails there, and then the jewelry and all that stuff, right? The jewelry that's there in the end, and then this, like the panning from her one hand to the other, and this weird jewelry here, and then her kissing his hand, like they want to make sure you get that part, but that doesn't happen organically. That's there's some direction there. There's some staging, right? This is a staged thing. It can't be any other way. And she has that G on her hand, like she always they have her hand here, so they're like they have. So she's not filming because her hands are on him. So she has somebody else filming above her, and she wants to post this. The sound of the widow weeping echoes throughout the world like a battle cry. And like she's not weeping. I mean, she's this stage thing. She's got these big ass man hands there, and then she's kissing his hand, and like someone's got this shot. How many did they have to do? Like, I like to see the ones that didn't make the cut. Like, how many takes did she have to do, right, to get this thing the way it was? And going from one hand to the other, that's part of it, like the whole thing. And so then she's got this fucking thing because America is, God, and there's her, like they, and then rolling this thing out. I mean, just posting this shit on Instagram is so like subpar. An American flag at half mast.
Okay, so what we'll do is let's just get all the habits here.
So fucking icky. Why was like there was the flags in my area were half mast as well. Again, a bereaved widow getting her husband retrieved on Air Force Two. Fucking, Her husband's coming back on the vice president's plane, taxpayer dollars. This guy's not a government official. He's nothing, right? He goes around and he argues with college kids about why they should, be Trumpers. And she's sitting there, she's walking there with this woman, holding her because she's so bereaved, right? Why film that shit? Like, why isn't there someone going, can you not film this? Because, she's filming this. This is her Instagram. And she's posting it with her text here, The sound of this widow's weeping echoes throughout this world like a battle cry. So, she was this influencer. She was known in the Christian community. She had a following. And now she wants to, she's going to have her ministry, right? He was the star of the family. He built this thing, with her help, because I'm sure she was instrumental in all of this, right? She's one of those kind of wives. Success was like, was not a success. Failure was not an option for whoever she married, right? Like Nancy Reagan-ish type, Jill Biden person. And then stop there. Look, and she looks at the camera. She looks at the camera because why the fuck are you filming this? Like, oh, I can't make it. Are you getting this? Are you getting this, Roger? Like, you got all that? Like, do we have to do another take? Right? I mean, just this stuff there being held up, right? All this, she's got to get her shot with the money shot with J.D. Vance. Oh, I think that was Usha. That was Usha Vance there. Yeah, that's what that is. That's Usha. So she's with J.D. Vance's wife. And she's going to turn around here and she's holding her up. Like, they're just so good friends. And she looked back, that whole thing had happened. So it's very performative, right? She has her, this thing right here, this whole speech, right? And they had that thing with her putting her hand on the chair. That was a big moment there. And, this got 3 million views just on Instagram. Another 3 million on YouTube. So this is getting millions upon millions of views. Now, this is her posing here with these things, right? They're,
What if childhood could hold eternity?
oh, she has crazy amounts of views even here. She has like 1 million views on just this thing. She's got this thing, right? I am 916. So like these are all performative thing, like this whole, like she's inserted herself in this story. So she's as much as part of this as he is, right? Like this thing, very, like all these, like these, very Instagram-ish, professionally done publicist.
Your thoughts on Sabbath and how practically your family practices this and applies it.
As the wife, I have seen it transform him in a way that is so powerful that when he turns his phone off and it goes in that drawer and I know that it's, he's all on for the family. There is no.
Okay. So, she's, she's a part of this thing. She's been answering questions. She goes up there. She's got a speech here, right?
I'm here to say welcome to the spiritual war. If you're not aware of it, put on the armor, stand your post, you're a woman of the word, and when you feel isolated or unseen, go back to that blueprint. Ruth, Deborah, Hannah, Esther.
Okay, she's got 70,000 likes on this thing, so she has a popular following as well. So this is, this was factored in, right, to what was, this is, like a lot of this stuff, they were ready to go, and here he is with his wife.
There's women here that are older and wiser, and instead of looking at a celebrity for your...
Okay. So this is, obviously not an accident, and this whole thing was so performative. But I think the majority of people were taken aback. I'm sure that, she has her people. There's people who this resonates with, and that's who it's for. Right, they're the dopes that buy into this stuff. But, clearly not an organic wife grieving. And the grief was the central part. And who cares about anything else right now? My husband's dead. The shock of his death, right? Like, going out and acting days after the guy's dead and doing that very performative speech and then putting all this performative shit up there is, it's a fucked up thing, right? So that's part of it. Like, you can't say that this is, like her, she's an entrepreneur. But she is, somebody who has her own thing, right? She does her own, whatever it might be. She had her own following, and she's a part of his whole thing. She had a massive following on Instagram. And I guess they have $30 million. They've made $30 million of money off of their, monetizing their relationship with the Christian religion and their relationship with Trump and these other things. All right, so this is here. There's a line here, right? They're saying that he had something on here. Movie special effects, how they create the effect of a gunshot that squirts blood. And then they show you how they do this thing here. Right? They put on this fake, whatever flesh, and and so, it could, what all this shows is that they could have done this, right? Like, this is a possibility that the guy's still alive. Like I said, in my last video, there's 3 possibilities. The first one is the official story is fairly accurate. Like, there's definitely manipulation now, right? There's manipulation in the, the after story, right? There's manipulation, like, his wife going out and being performative, that makes the thing look more fake. Like, she doesn't seem to be really grieving. Like, she's making sure all of her grief is caught on camera, and that she's got the proper makeup on, and her nails are done, and she's got, the dress stuff going on, right? So, these things. So, just because they could have done this with fake blood doesn't mean it's that. But, there's the after story. But in terms of the other options, so, the official story is that this disgruntled kid acted alone. And he went out, he had a beef with Charlie Kirk, and he figured out how he could assassinate him and leave a shit ton of evidence behind and then get caught. And then his backstory will be whatever it is. And his motive will be whatever they say it is. And then there'll be just, the story will die and move on to something else. And so that's the official story. The second thing is he's not dead. And this thing is all fake. And this, this would be covered here, how that is. What happened, some special effects thing. And so, I don't know. Like, I don't think that that's the case, but that could be. And so the third option is he was assassinated, and who did it? Like, the story we're getting is bullshit. Who is it? Is it Israel? Is it Trump? Is it the left wing? Who did this thing? And so there's, those are the things that are, basically on the table, right? Okay, went for a walk with my wife. We talked about this a little bit, and I had some more thoughts. I just sort of edited the Journey series, the 213th. I put all the voiceovers together. And, I was having some thoughts about this the whole time. So the first part is one of Lalaji's big teachings. Lalaji was the first master of the system. And most of his, he wrote some essays, but there was no video back then. And there was, he was a poor guy, like really poor. He was born into a wealthy family. His dad was a wealthy businessman, so they were one of the wealthier people in this town. They had land and horses and shit. But his mom passed away at an early age, and his dad lost all his money to a British king, a British Raj, one of the Indians appointed by the British family, by the British royalty, as being a ruler of that area. And the guy just was taking people's land, and he took Lalaji's dad's land and all of his belongings. So he had nothing. And his dad basically just gave up and died. And Lalaji was dirt poor as a young adult. He was educated, but he had basically nothing. And, so he wrote a bunch of things that are very abstract, hard to understand, yogic, like heavy, yogic teachings about things that you'd have to know a lot about the yogic, the yogic systems. And I'm not talking about hatha yoga, like all the various spiritual points and the things like this. And so it's hard to read, like his books were, and he had one book called Truth Eternal, didn't hang together. But one of his understandable teaching was, you didn't criticize people's religion. There's a difference in the Sajmark system between spirituality and religion. Religion, the God is outside of you and it's controlled by a third-party entity, organization like Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or Judaism or any number of the organizations that are we don't know about, but there's all these various religions, right? And God is outside of you. Like God is, you're one place and God is another. Where spirituality, you realize God's inside of you and you form a relationship with God. And now you're, and a spiritual organization helps that relationship. So that's what Sajmarg is about, right? But, it's the teachings of Sajmarg are very clear that not everybody's able to be spiritual, right? So Jesus was born as a Jew, but then he became something else. He became spiritual. So that's an example of that, right, for Christians. There's Christian saints that happened to, where they went from being in a religion to having an internal relationship with God, which is a much higher state of being, but it becomes much more difficult, and not everybody can do it. And so you don't criticize people's religion to them because, maybe that's all they can do. And so I don't, religions are whatever they are, but there's some people that's all they can do. But those people have plenty of other places to go. There's a lot more content out for people who don't have the ability for abstract thought. The majority of content out there is aimed at dumb people, stupid people, addicted people, right? Weak people, people who are, lost people, right? So people who are looking to, better themselves and whatever in a spiritual capacity, there's not that much content out there. Almost none. Like that's real. That's not some scam kind of thing, right? And so, I'm happy with people who do religion. If that's all they can do, then I'm glad they're doing it, right? Like but, I want to make sure that those people aren't really, unless they can aspire to be something more, that those people find whatever they're supposed to find, and it's not here. I'm not dumbing down my content for people who have so much of the content is catered towards them, right? And the problem I have with this guy and his wife is that they're not real religious people. They're like, Jim and Tammy Baker and those kind of big-time evangelicals. They've made bank off of their fake, they might think that they believe in God or he did or whatever. I mean, he's certainly better than she is. And she's definitely a person with a lot of ambition. But, it's whether they're making the world a better place. And I could see that Charlie Kirk wasn't. He was taking the capital he built up and, the convincing people he was a godly person. And then as a godly person, in these young people's eyes, he endorsed Trump, who is the devil. And so, that's bad. Like he was making the world worse with the content that I saw. Not just the truther stuff, but, taking people down he was a Judas goat, right? And so I was thinking more about her writing. See, she came out and wrote a fucking speech, right? But our Lord and Savior, our God, He is good. I will never have the words ever. The sound of the widow weeping echoes. Sound of this widow weeping across echoes throughout the world like a battle cry. She has a lot of ambition, and she's obviously wants to be in front of a camera. She likes it, and now she gets to be the wife of a martyr. Like the martyr as a role, in the ancient guru culture in India and other places, the ancient culture of teacher and disciple, the ones who are good ones, they always are like, my master, my teacher, my guru, said this. And, it can be a positive, the person that can help them be humble, that they had a teacher and they're always looking to be taught even after the guru has left the planet, and ultimately surrendering to God and, through these relationships, the guru-disciple relationship. And so on the high end, it's about humility. My master said this, my guru said this kind of thing. But on the low end, it's about validation. Oh, my great dead master said this. People do this with Jesus. Jesus said this, and Jesus was that, and Jesus was, they use Jesus, and you really can't, you can't debate Jesus, or you can't, somebody who's dead is memorialized. And so, when someone's a martyr, and they suffered, like Jesus was a martyr, and and the way the Christians have marketed their religion, because it's, that's the worst part. Like Jesus being killed the way he was not a good thing. It showed that people were just pieces of shit, right, across the board, and his disciples all being killed that way. But now Charlie Kirk is martyred, and she gets to have the martyr, right? She speaks for the martyr, and she gets, she'll milk this victim consciousness and martyrdom all the way to being a fucking billionaire, like fucking, she's got that shit in her, because she's writing this speech. The sound of this widow weeping echoes throughout this world like a battle cry. I have no idea what any of this means, but baby, I know you do, and so does our Lord. She has like a business plan. Like she's going to keep the tour going, and she's going to, she's already done a lot of social media. She's comfortable in front of a crowd. And then she gets to wear this mask of her husband's martyrdom. And like her and Trump right now are the biggest winners of his death, right? Like she's, she now doesn't have to play second fiddle to him. I don't know if there's any jealousy, but I do know she wrote down a 30-minute speech that was very performative. There's this moment here where she, she reaches out for his chair, and that was scripted. Like she, like that was his chair where he delivered his stuff, and it becomes sacred, and then this her weeping in the coffin, doing these stage things here. Go back to that one. I love you so, this whole thing, and this was all like a plan of like it's stagecraft, and then this thing with there she is with she's being hugged by the vice president and Usha, and them walking together. Now, my wife pointed out, does she not have anybody closer to her than Usha? Like her bestie is Usha. Like, she gets again, it's clout chasing. It's showing, look at me, I'm being supported. Like all these people, just them, like they're being filmed, and everyone else is just standing there. And she breaks down. Usha looks, back at the camera. Look at me, look how important my husband is, and the vice president, and this kind of thing. This is an ambitious woman, and the cunning here. Like this is 3 days after her husband's been. I mean, the shock of, I went back and I watched him being shot, and it can all be fake. I will grant you, I will give you that. But when I looked at the way his body moved when he got shot, and I didn't like looking at it, and like it was disturbing to me. And, not in a way if I was watching a TV show was disturbing. So I felt like it was real. The way his body jerked and the way his body slumped over, and this is, again, people saw that. There was all these people there in Utah. And I don't know, me talk to somebody to see if they saw, that, whatever it is. But it's shocking to see. And I guess his daughter ran to him. One of his young daughters, I'm not sure if this is true. This is might be just right-wing stuff that they say. But his wife and daughter were there, and his daughter ran to him. He was all, bloody and, whatever. But, if he's dead, which I think he is, it's shocking. Just, like, I didn't even know the fucking guy and don't like him, right? And it's hard to watch. And so she's already writing speeches and coming up with a business plan and taking over his ministry and using him as a martyr and all this stuff and hobnobbing with the Vances, right? And all these things, like in this moment, these scripted moments, and just all these things, like all these pictures, photo ops with advances, and like, you know, there's what about her family and all these, you know, there she is, like what she's doing, she's praying this thing here. No, don't take my photo, but I will post it up on Instagram. Please, you guys, no photos, but send me a copy so I can put it on his, you know, like, and so it's pretty fucked up, right? And so the other piece to this is somebody had said that, see, like her reaching out, this is, you know, her from before, I guess this was 6 days ago. So the way she's comforting a, you know, a handy-capable person. You know, but it's very performative and all, you know, very into her things. And she's got these posts, you know, these posts were getting, this one got 42,000 views, you know, all these kind of things, right? She had her own popularity thing that she was. You know, somebody had said that J.D. Vance, not that, this guy Kirk, what, Charlie Kirk, what's his name? You know, that he, Chucky Kirk, that he said that he was worried that Israel would kill him. And that came from InfoWars, you know, the shill organization. Nothing that comes from InfoWars is legitimate. I mean, it's worse than, you know, they're bad. Alex Jones stuff. So, you know, should be dismissed. But let me switch over here to the other thing. So part of the story that came from InfoWars, one of my viewers left a comment. Anything from InfoWars, don't share. Like, if you're going to put in the comments, say this is from InfoWars. Like, because fucking InfoWars sucks. And so if you watch me and watch InfoWars, it's fine. But if you send me shit, you know, like, like, I mean, just, it loses all credibility when it's from InfoWars. But anyways, Charlie Kirk, you know, they said that he rejected a big payment from Netanyahu, then he was frightened that Netanyahu was going to whatever. But I believe that Turning Point is a very interesting name because everybody's talking about how this is a turning point with the Charlie Kirk thing. And like almost like this was and apparently he was planning for his death. He got death threats and they had a business plan in place. You know, I guess that's, you know, again, a lot of this stuff is hearsay. But, you know, I looked up to see if there was any connection that I could easily find from Charlie Kirk being connected or donated from Israel. But I know that, you know, Israel was giving money to people who would post positively about them. And Charlie Kirk did it better than anybody because he had a bigger audience and he did it with this idea that you're supposed to honor Israel. And he shilled and said shit that most people wouldn't even go there. And so, you know, I listened to a story the other day it was a guy on Joe Rogan. I forget, Bobby Lee. And Bobby Lee's a Korean guy. And he told a story in which he, well, you know, when he was coming up, like he has a successful podcast now. But when he was coming up, one of his friends, another Asian comedian, I forget the guy's name, but I know, you know, I've seen some of his stuff, said that you could get a free trip to Israel. And we got there, Israel said you had to post every day, you know, the people, this handlers, something great about how great it was in Israel. And they were monitoring their social media to make sure, because they're giving you a free trip, but you have to endorse Israel. And I know that when this stuff started to go down, people on YouTube, and including truthers, were being contacted by Israel, and they were paying money to say positive things about Israel. And nobody did that better than and more than Charlie Kirk. And so, you know, him being owned by Israel is problematic when he came back and said he realized that Mossad might be connected to Epstein. I showed you that one clip because now, you know, he's taking money. He's sponsored by them, and all of a sudden he says something that, you know, is one of the worst things you could possibly say is tie Epstein to Israel and Mossad. And, you know, that also screwed Trump. So, you know, possibly that could be a part of what we saw here. You know, that might be, you know, whatever. But let me go to this other thing here. This is from Times of Israel here. Conservative influencer and Israeli advocate Charlie Kirk shot dead at Utah event. This is the Times of Israel. And so somewhere around there, he says, it says that he promoted multiple organizations somewhere here. Grandma's forgotten method for facial hair removal. That's the kind of ad you get on the Times of Israel. They tell you how you can shave your grandma. Get those ugly fucking pubes off your grandma's face. Kirk, an evangelical Christian, was avowedly pro-Israel and often debated the Gaza war with college students and others. In the video shared online, Kirk's Turning Point USA had maintained ties with pro-Israel organizations and regularly hosted pro-Israel speakers and at its conferences. Kirk himself traveled to Israel and praised Trump's policies regarding the Jewish state, including the 2018 embassy move to Jerusalem. I was about to search for Charlie Kirk going to Israel, but he, and let me see if there's a video. But there it is, right? So Charlie Kirk went to Israel and was promoting Israel to these crowds, and so he was getting, the guy was a money guy, right? He made bank, and so there's no doubt that he was getting money because they give you money to do that shit, right? They give you our taxpayer dollars. We give taxpayer dollars to Israel, and Israel pays pieces of shit like Charlie Kirk to be pro-Israel. It's like it's a loop, right? In which the taxpayers, the American people, are getting screwed. So I searched Charlie Kirk in Israel, and I couldn't find anything on YouTube initially, but he went there. Charlie Kirk's first anti-Israeli student. Then there's proof Charlie Kirk was terrified of Israel. Jimmy Dore show. Jimmy Dore, I like Jimmy a little bit. People watch him. I watched a little bit of his thing. I like that guy, Kirk, whatever his sidekick. He did something with Kyle Dunnigan. But the guy, he supported Trump, and I know maybe he's walked it back, and he was pushing this whole fucking fake. He didn't call out the bullshit, assassination attempt. But, there's, and a lot of this is, like I said, it's stemmed from an InfoWars report. Now, there's a Megyn Kelly, Kirk to Megyn Kelly, Israel is not above criticism. So if he started to turn on Israel, he was getting money from them, and, when you associate with Israel, they can fuck you over. It's not a stand-up country, right? So, there's that part of it. Let me see if I can find it on this channel here. Okay, they're wearing things here. Feder Grant Strichten, she's on Newsmax. Newsmax went all in on this bullshit thing.
So much of this propaganda, in the campuses, in the universities, in the press, in the social media, that people then take them seriously. And then they do this horrific thing that they did to Charlie.
So he's blaming all the anti-Israeli protests on Charlie's death, which is fucked up because he doesn't know, right?
It's just horrific to see it. And
just so horrific, fucking horrific, right? Fucking horrific out there. So fucking horrific.
This is the battle we're fighting. They're trying to basically snuff out democracy, snuff out free speech, kill those who speak, like Charlie. Who spoke, he said, come, debate me. He didn't say, bring a rifle. He said, bring your arguments. I'll defeat your arguments with fact and logic. That's what Charlie stood for. And
he didn't want people bringing rifles. He wanted to bring their arguments.
People are the exact opposite. They speak of human rights, but they trample all human rights to the dust. And
just like you've done wonderful things for the Palestinian people. Right? So, but here's the piece I want to show you. So keep in mind, the people who I see definitely benefiting thus far, Trump, because he was getting fucking Epstein the shit out of him, and his wife, who's now the star of the show. And, I would say, well, if she was a real grieving widow, of course not. She doesn't have a husband. She lost somebody she loved and her kids, right? But the way that she's businessing this fucking thing and, writing speeches and things like that. So that's that. But Israel, if Charlie Kirk was, and he did, I showed you that clip where he was saying Israel and Mossad was, or at least Mossad was implicated in Jeffrey Epstein. So him saying that, if that keeps on going, fucks Israel. So, if he was going to go in that direction, and we don't know how far he was going to go, but if he did do that, well, it certainly benefits Israel. So that's, and he's a martyr now, and this guy gets to come out, this thing. So, I mean, it's not like this guy isn't benefiting either, right? Because he is.
That stop sending weapons and everything else. But before I let you go, I want you to address one thing, and it's just the absurdity of it. Some of the internet rumors that somehow Israel is behind the Charlie Kirk murder, and
it's not absurd. It's not fucking absurd because Israel kills people. Mossad is a brutal thing. I believe that they were probably involved with the big event 2001. They were involved, right? So, I mean, it's not above them, and possibly involved with RFK or JFK assassination. So, and all this murder of the Palestinian, they're not above this kind of thing, right? So it's not absurd. If he was turning on them, it's, I'm not saying I don't know. Like, I don't know, like you don't know. But it's not absurd.
I don't believe it for 1 second, but I want you to, make a statement. It's so absurd.
That's insane. That's insane.
It's insane. It's so insane.
Israel also changes the orbit of the moon. Israel pushes the...
Wait, did Israel changes the orbit of the moon too? So I told my wife about this, and then we were making up stuff. We were joking about how, other things that he could have said. Israel's moving the moon. Israel's moving the sun. Israel did 9/11. Israel sank the USS Liberty. Israel controls the financial markets. Israel murdered 30,000 Palestinian children. All these preposterous things that he...
Son, I mean, the whole thing is, it's not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid, so stupid.
It's stupid and absurd. It's insane kind of trumps stupid and absurd.
Stupid and so ridiculous. You can't believe that people are saying that. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But
they found the perpetrator, that guy. That's totally believable, that guy, that fucking guy, that random fuck. That guy, he's believable. Israel? Fuck, no. Who would ever think Israel would do such a thing? This makes it, I mean, it just sounds guilty. Like, everything he says, he sounds fucking guilty, this piece of shit, right? Okay, so this is Charlie Kirk's channel, now his wife's, Ericka Kirk's channel. And I searched for trip to Israel. And does Israel have a right to exist? I mean, he's just all about Israel. Like, Israel's a big part of his thing. And, you can see just one video after another that has Israel somehow in it. So he went there, they said in 2018, there he is with that guy. And so Charlie Kirk destroys man bun idiot with facts and logic. Right? So this is his, this is his channel. And he's talking, the titles have him in the third person. Riley Gaines is another piece of shit that's involved with this. Charlie Kirk takes on final boss of brainwashed college students. So he had Gaddafi up there for a second. And of course, he's anti-Iran. He was pro-Iranian, the whole thing. So that's enough of that shit, right? So that is whatever it is. He got whatever money he got from them, is whatever the relationship was. And, it probably helped him. They definitely helped him, be promoted, to whatever stuff with Trump. I just want to show you one more thing from his wife, and I got a couple other things to get to here. So this is live from the Turning Point Memorial. I don't know if this is going to be an ongoing thing, because this is like the middle of the night there. And I don't know, well, how is this good content? Or where is this thing? Is this some kind of parade or whatever? bet his wife's going to show up and get some attention. You know, it's very staged, right? Her big ass hands there. But here, it took a while for them to get going here. But they start off with a desk, right?
I want to thank my husband's dear friend, Vice President Vance.
Yeah, she's clout chasing.
Witnessed for his America on Saturday. So go Ducks.
Go Ducks.
But such a good man.
He was such a good man.
How can I serve you better? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? Every day. Every day.
Every day.
He's such a good man.
Such a good man. Such a good man.
He still is a good man.
Still is a good man. Just he's not. It doesn't have a body
He was the perfect
anymore.
father. He was the perfect husband.
Perfect husband in every possible way.
Charlie always believed that God's design for marriage and the family was absolutely amazing.
This is the moment here,
The
right?
best way you can do that is going to tpusa.com. That's what he would say every day from this chair. Every single day. I
That
watched
chair.
his show every day, and he would always say, if you want to get involved, go to tpusa.com. If you're a pastor, join our movement at TPUSA Faith. And if you're a parent, I highly recommend that you come to America Fest in December.
I'm trying to find the where she reaches
Sign
out
up
to
right
the
now
chair.
for that because we would love to see you. I would love to see you. Charlie would. He'll be there.
He'll be there.
He
Charlie's
loved
there.
nature, which helped him always bring him closer to God. He loved the Chicago Cubs. And
He
my
did. He
goodness,
just loved
he
those
loved the
Cubs.
Oregon Ducks. Want me to say go Ducks, so I have to since they play on Saturday.
Go Ducks. So here it is. Here's where she reached out to the chair.
His amazing Charlie Kirk show, who helped him broadcast from this studio, this chair.
This chair. You know, just fucking icky. Holy shit. Just fucking icky, right? Business plan coming in, swinging hard. You know, swinging her, bringing her big man hands, all that shit, and rolling it out. And I mean, just so performative and so, like, just absolutely icky. Okay, so I got at least 3 more video clips to show you. One is what CNN was reporting on what they knew about this guy, Tyler Robinson, right? This thing about developing story, new details, And, you know it's staged at this point because they've taken the weekend off. There has been no revelations about this kid. And, to stop from changing the story back to Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm sure this guy talked about Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I had one clip where he talked about Jeffrey Epstein, right? Charlie Kirk. So that's kind of, they're playing with a little bit of fire here because the Charlie Kirk people could be like, well, we want more stuff at Epstein, right? I mean, I don't know how that would go, but they almost have to come up with some more bombshell revelations to keep this thing going, right? So this story's going to die over the weekend unless they have something new on Monday. But like I said, maybe they don't want to get too into what this kid believed in and just let the left run with their thing and the right run with their thing because division is always a part of these psychological operations. But I'll get to those clips in a second. But first I want to add some things. I went out and did a bunch of work outside. Beautiful day outside today. It's like 80 degrees. And I thought I would clarify, what people would think is a negative opinion about, why I call this guy a piece of shit, and his wife. And I got this comment. YouTube will send out comments to my phone, like notifications. So I get about, 200 comments a day. So, I'm putting out a video a day, and my videos got 199 yesterday, 175 today. So I got a lot yesterday from the last video. I haven't read those yet. 189. So, 200 comments, 61, 67, 60, 55, 76, 79. Somewhere around 100 comments a day. And I used to get so many more when I posted, if I posted 4 videos instead of 1 and I got so many more views, I would get hundreds of comments every day. But YouTube will recommend one comment, right? And the comment that, once in a while, YouTube, I'll get a notification on my phone. Jesus, it took me a long time to say that. And the person writes, are you basing your opinion on Charlie Kirk based on what you actually said or what somebody else said about him? And I was just about to address this, so I thought that was interesting. I wasn't about to address what this moron said because this guy hasn't watched my videos, because that should answer, it would answer itself because, I don't watch other truthers or opinionated content, right? I mean, I mock the news, but I don't know what anybody else said about Charlie Kirk. My initial dislike for the guy was a clip that somebody sent me in which Charlie Kirk was implicating Mossad with Jeffrey Epstein. And it was something where he agreed with me. And I just looked at the guy and I got a sense of him. We do like a spiritual reading. Plus I do, when I have a master's in counseling, I used to do psychological assessment. And, my first reaction to somebody is more often than not the most accurate. Like I have had where I had these kind of reactions to women. My ex and my first real girlfriend, it was in my 20s. And I had a negative reaction to them, and I didn't want anything to do with them. And somehow, through interactions, they sucked me into their succubus ways. But so many times people will react, you'll react to somebody and you won't like somebody. And then you get to know them and they kind of win you over, and then you think that they're great, and then they turn out to be just like you thought when you first met them, right? Like this happens to people who are intuitive. And you knew, and then somehow there's people who are just really fucking great at, Trump is like one of these kind of people, talking you out of your, what you know about them, right? People who are really good at bullshitting their way into believing that you believe in that they're actually a good person or something like this, whilst being a piece of shit, right? It's like oftentimes they're being a piece of shit and they're still able to explain their way out of it and convince you. But I wanted to say this about like Charlie Kirk. So, the things that he believes. So I made a video. I went and did some research. My wife asked me about it because she didn't know much about him either, but she had some people that she knew and they liked him. And she was like, didn't understand why I, was saying what I was saying about him. And I really didn't know much about him. And so I had to be able to make my case. So I went to his channel and I found some positions to demonstrate to you all that he's a piece of shit, right? And so, number one, he's backing Israel's unconditional genocide of the Palestinian people. And he wants the Palestinian people to be ethnic cleansed from Israel. He said the reason was, it says in the Bible, the Jewish portion of the Bible, the Old Testament, that you should honor Israel. The same thing that piece of shit Ted Cruz said. And, it's bullshit Christianity that's not anything to do with God. Like there's a lot in every religion that has nothing to do with God. It's it's a bullshit thing. There's a lot of bullshit in the Bible, right? A lot of bad stuff. That's not about God at all. It's about a demon, especially the Old Testament. But he was saying that these Palestinian people that Jordan and Egypt should be forced to accept them. 2 million immigrants. So he's fucking over all those Arab countries on the behest of Israel, and he's clearly getting money for them, which he's benefiting from their financial incentive program to, carry water for them and shill for them. And so the other thing was, backing Trump, who's a piece of shit, and also backing Trump's martial law, like his policies that are clearly go against what these people who call themselves patriots stand for. Patriots are not for martial law. If you're a patriot, you're not for martial law. I mean, that's traditionally what somebody who called themselves a patriot would definitely say. Pax comitatus is a good thing. And that's, putting troops on the streets is a bad thing. So I gave you 3 examples of him being a piece of shit and agreeing with Trump and Israel and these things. But, that's not why I think he's a piece of shit, right? Like those are things that I had to support my argument, right? And this applies even more so to his wife. That these people aren't really as far as I can tell, doing anything to me personally. Like, I don't feel any negativity or anger. The wife annoys me more than the husband. You know, I could tolerate the husband, you know, Charlie. But Ericka, not so much. And, you know, when you talk about somebody disagreeing with your belief system, my belief system, that's only one character quality, right? Which is discernment. And so when somebody's a sheeple, or somebody doesn't agree with, you know, things that are, I mean, are like, to me, fairly easy to see, logical things, they don't have discernment, they don't have critical thinking skills, or maybe they're just people who are so, they're oriented in such a way that they love to be with the authority. You know, like I was saying yesterday, you don't get, there's only one authority, and that's the people that control the government, the mainstream media, you know, the official story. The official story is the only authorized story. The rest of these stories are considered fringe and, you know, conspiracy theorists and all these things. As right as they may be, the one official story is always the, you know, the shitty one that comes from the beast. And there are some people who are just, they don't question authority. And, you know, there's great people who do massage mark meditation. The Indian people specifically. Some live in America, some in India, and they are legitimate saints. Like, they are, not because, you know, sainthood isn't something where I get to say who's a saint, or you get to say who's a saint. A saint is made a saint by their service to God. And these people who I've seen in action, I can say they're like legitimate saints, they're higher developed souls. But oftentimes they are sheeple in their orientation, because in India they don't challenge authority. And they're told not to question their elders, and they're not given these critical thinking skills. And so although they're very spiritual and very devotional and very service oriented, they're not, you know, they're sheeple. They're like shitty sheeple. And when the Sajmark system collapsed into this goofy thing called heartfulness by this clown Dodgy, the fourth master of the system, who's a real dope, but he, you know, and tried to turn this thing into a cult, it was very easy because these people don't question authority, and you know, even if they question inside, they don't share it with other people, even if they have questions internally. And so, you know, just because somebody's a sheeple doesn't make them a bad person. Just because people have resistance to waking up to the lies of our system and don't agree with us with certain things, it doesn't make them a bad person. Now, Charlie, you know, this guy, Charlie Kirk, the problem with him is he's teaching lies and being paid to teach lies. You know, he's a shill that's being supported by Israel to say things that are not only destructive to the Palestinian people, the Israeli people, because they're fucking going to have to bear the burden of their bullshit actions that are happening here, but also the American people who Israel is fleecing. And, you know, he's telling these kids that Trump is great and Trump is bringing in martial law. So it isn't just about his beliefs, but it's also what he's willing to sell his soul and lie to these kids and influence them. And so, you know, I mean, if I have to say something, I'm going to tell you this guy's a piece of shit, because, you know, to anybody who's listening to me, they can, you know, again, I have to make a case for it, because I don't expect people to blindly accept what I'm saying, but he's a piece of shit because it's not what he believes. It's not the, you know, the things that he's saying. It's how he's saying them and what they're being used for. And that is to deceive young college-age kids who don't know any better. And he gains their trust with, you know, quoting scripture. And, you know, Charles Manson quoted scripture, right? Like, there's been David Koresh was great at quoting scripture. You know, I mean, there's been fucking great scripture quoters, all those evangelical fucking priests and things like that, right? And so the reason I said this guy was a piece of shit is because the way he was moving people, young people, in the wrong direction, away from truth, away from what was in their best self-interest, and away from the divinity that's in them, and to some bullshit religion that, you know, it isn't that his teachings were bad. It's that his teachings are being used to do bad shit. You know, and this is something that, you know, given what I just said about this guy Dodgy, when somebody hijacks a legitimate spiritual movement, it's fucked. Like, that's the worst thing you can do. You know, it's worse than any other crime or anything like this. When you had something that could have really helped people connect to the divinity within them, and Jesus had that. Like, Jesus had good teachings and he had good, intentions. But they took his good teachings and good intentions and turned it into a powerful, religious power, which is not about God, and political power and money power. And now it's like horrible. It's like taking people in the wrong direction. It's hurting them. It's disconnecting, it's blocking them from their connection with God. And so all those people who then, use that religious scam to take on a new generation and profit themselves. And that's what this guy and his wife are doing. So that's why I call them pieces of shit. And his wife is even worse because the fucking guy isn't even in the ground yet. I'm assuming the guy's dead. And she's already, that pedestal that she had out with do they have that shit ready to go? She's already taken over and she's got martyr money, right? She's going to martyr the shit out of that guy. The way they use martyrs, and martyrdom and being a martyr is fucked up. It has nothing to do with God, right? You don't die for God. See, here's the thing, and this is what I really want to say here. The second master of the Sajmark system, Babaji, he was being told that people were fucking off. Preceptors weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and people were not doing the practice, and they weren't holding up their end, right? They had their spiritual practice, and he, as their spiritual master, was there helping them and, providing for them the pathway, clearing the path through this transmission and cleaning to help them move closer to God. And he was being told about all these people, like, just being shitty. And he said to somebody, what I'm doing for them is my business. What they're not doing for me is their business, right? Because when you're in a relationship, that sometimes you're putting more effort in than the other person, right? Or other people. Or you're in a business and you're doing 80% of the work and you're splitting the profits 50-50. So there's things that happen like that where people, where you overperform. And you'll feel like a victim as long as you think you're doing things for other people. But one of the great teachings of the system, the meditation system I do, is that you work for God. Anything that I do here is, in terms of the spiritual stuff, is my debt to God and the Sajmark system, right? Because I've benefited from the people that did it before, the masters, the divinity that's there, God and the system has helped me. And so, you have to pay it forward in some way. And I'm not doing it for you all, even though some of you might benefit from it. Because, it's something that I'm doing for divinity. You work for God and not for people. And any good spiritual person, a person who's being effective on their spiritual path, has to learn you work for God and not people. And so, you do the work and the work is yours and the results are God's, another one of these teachings. And when you understand that there's no victimization, when these shitty people inevitably screw you over and crucify you, right? Because that's what happens fucking from humanity, especially in the West. People will turn on you. They'll tell you much how they love you and how much they, I'm not saying this as a personal thing. I'm talking about a spiritual person, a saint. They'll tell you how great you are and, they'll benefit from all the generous spiritual energy you give to them. But when you start thinking about you're working for them and you start, thinking you're in a horizontal relationship, which is, between two people, as opposed to a vertical relationship where you work for God and your success is defined by your relationship with God. And you work for God to be a better husband or better wife or better parent or better child, son or daughter, whatever, better employee, better spiritual person, better YouTuber, these things. And those people, who are on the other end of it, who are, it's a three-way relationship in the sense that everybody, the parties involved are all working for God and they're doing the work for God and not for the other people, but the other people benefit for it. You're doing service to other people, but you're doing it for God, right? And then when the people screw you over, then you're not feeling like they screwed you over because you were never, doing it for them, right? They don't owe you because it's between you and God, right? And so that's how spiritual people should be. But these motherfuckers, I mean, this woman's rolling out her husband as this, as this fucking martyr. And like, she's going to get martyr money now. She's she's all in. And they, again, it's not really affecting me. It's me saying that they're piece of shit is because, this is piece of shit behavior, right? Like this is, it's deceptive. And this woman, this Ericka, what's his name? Charlie Kirk, Ericka Kirk. She, there's the kind of personality she has. It's like one of three types, right? And so there are people who can't internalize their existence. They don't have any inner dialogue. They can't do anything without other people seeing it. They're completely performative. And now in the days of social media, even when they're alone, they're taking pictures and they're, posting shit on Instagram and, other places to get validation from externalized people, other people, from something external to them. And they can't be, quiet by themselves. They can't exist, with what they have inside themselves. They don't feel comfortable. They don't develop any internal world or dialogue. They can't really meditate. They have trouble closing their eyes. They need to be distracted, and everything's externalized, right? And it's all superficial stuff. How you look, her jewelry and her nails, and she spent a couple hours getting ready to be on camera. It's like she had it like all going for her, right? The dress and the stuff and all the thing planned out, all the flower, she had like her funeral for him, her martyr of a husband, it's like a wedding, right? It's almost like the effort you put into a wedding, right? She had hairdressers and fucking, everything going, you could just see it. And so there are people like that who can't internalize everything. And so, it's her being very performative. Like she doesn't know what genuine is. And she might be, the other thing is there's some moments where you could see the hardness. She has a hard heart. You could see the hardness in her. It's sneaked through. So she could be like a real bitch. And that's who she is authentically. Like some person who can, some celebrity you'll see in some movie, they'll have a celebrity or, a rich woman or something who's really sweet and nice to all the people. As soon as the cameras are off, she's yelling at people and throwing shit at people. And she's having tantrums, really narcissistic and selfish. And like I could totally see that being her behind the scenes. And so her being authentic would be showing what a miserable bitch she is, right? But then there are other people that just don't have an authentic self. Like their authentic self is something that is just performative. Like these Bratz dolls, she's like a Kardashian, right? She's, the Kardashian level of consciousness. They're like stupid and they just, everything is trends and, what other people are thinking and, performative. That's why she has to hobnob with the vice president, his wife, and, it all has to be upward climbing, and there's no real human being there. But whatever the fuck it is, she's just not capable of being in her grief. Like she should be in a state of shock, and then just like fuck the world. I just gotta I can't deal with the world right now, right? I cannot, even extroverts, I cannot deal with the world right now. Like I just fucking have to be away from people, and I gotta compose my, I can't even. Where you're walking in, you're like you're banging into shit, like you're like in a stupor, like you're lost, your state of shock, instead of this performative bullshit that she rolled out. So anyways, so when I say piece of shit, it's usually to do with something like that. It's not just about beliefs, it's about, what people's intentions are, what their effect on other people are, and, what kind of, what's their orientation to this world and what their primary focus is. And if it's narcissism and evil, it's like, they're a piece of shit. So let's wrap this thing up. I got 2 more video clips to show you here. Okay.
So there's some really good polling out of Alaska that shows that Kelly Shabaka is gaining on Lisa Murkowski and is in a very, very good position despite the unconstitutional, immoral.
This is what I didn't like. Just you can just look at somebody's face and kind of just there's a they just like they're exuding something.
Incredibly complicated rank choice voting system. Never should have been approved. It's
the shifty eyes that just he's not a spiritual person. When you look at a spiritual person, you feel God. Like even if the person's being an asshole, there's people you can just feel like there's something special about them, something angelic, even if they're not necessarily nice people. Like sometimes they'll be miserable people. I've talked about how people with soft hearts have to have defense mechanisms and also often can be assholes, right? But you look at their eyes and you're like, holy shit, that person's a spiritual person, right? Like they have something going on, a depth, and you can lose that. But you can see it in a person, right? That there's something there. You can see that like there's a love for God, a kindness, a devotion. These things he doesn't have it. Plus politics and, like I said, spirituality don't mix. And he's really into these politics. Like he's really, he's more of a political person that reads some scripture now and again. He's trying to make it about God, but it's really about he wants political power. His wife has that martyr money and now the political power that goes with it, right? It's someone who's saying that they're witnessing for God by going and serving in the political system, and that's completely false because they want the fucking they want the power that goes with it.
Silly, it's backwards, it's rigged, it's awful. So the new communication strategy for Democrats, now that their polling advantage is collapsing in every single state, collapsing in Ohio, it's collapsing even in Arizona. It is now a race where Blake Masters is in striking distance. Kerry Lake is doing very, very well. The new communication strategy is not to do what Bill Clinton used to do, where he would say, I feel your pain. Instead, it is to say, you're actually not in pain. So let's just very short clip. Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that it does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it...
Okay, so this seems to be an older clip. I'm not sure when Kerry Lake ran. I don't know if she ran this past election cycle. I'm not sure when this is from. And this is going around, people talking about how he doesn't believe in empathy as it's a New Age term. Now, empathy, you have emotions, and some of the emotions are natural, like fear and anger. They're things that animals feel. Fear and anger are in your gut. They're lower level emotions. And then there's things like hatred and resentment and jealousy that are more, they're more constructed by your personality, but they come with an emotion. There's a, bitterness that goes with it. And then there's higher feelings, compassion, certainly love being the most, God's love, which you feel in your heart. So you have a gut intelligence that feels the lower level emotions. Your appetites, your lust, your sexual appetites, your food appetites, it's all in your gut, right? It's your primal, and people say I go with my gut. That means they're going with their animalistic instincts, their primal instincts, right? There's no higher consciousness of the heart, and there's no mind, there's no thinking of the brain and the mind. You have your mind, which is, like a computer and has, you can calculate and you can use it to solve, abstract thought, having, complex equations, whatever it is. You know what your mind does. And then your heart, which is where love exists. So that's why if you're going to experience God, it's through the heart. You can't experience God through your mind, and certainly not through your gut. Your heart, according to this idea of samskaras, impressions from previous lives and, this life, where you store your information. So that's where your spiritual grossness is. But when you clean that off, you have your soul resides in your heart, and there's your connection to God is there. So when you connect with God, you feel your soul. It's through your heart. And you have love and compassion and empathy. Empathy is one of these higher developed feelings, and being empathetic for other people. I know people who call themselves empaths. I said, I feel other people's stuff, but I don't care about them. I've described myself as an empath that doesn't care about other people, which is not totally true. Like I care about other people, but not like I should. But I do feel other people's pain and things like this. I don't know to what degree. You become more sensitive when you do the meditation that I do. But empathy is a real thing. And when I worked as a counselor with sex offenders, adolescent sex offenders and children who had been sexually abused and then had acted out, and we used the pathways model of psychological treatment for sexual offenses and addiction. And the number one thing we were trying to create within the kid was empathy. But these kids had no empathy for their victims. And that is, this guy is not an empathetic person, right? If he was really going out and reaching out, because I heard a lot of people say wonderful things. I just heard Tucker Carlson talking to Megyn Kelly, and I don't know even why I listened to it, talk about how this guy was so great and he loved everybody and he could interact with these Republicans. On his videos, he's putting the Republicans down because, if you want to be somebody who is a spiritual leader, you have to throw your politics. Politics and spirituality can't exist. It has to be for everybody. And, in a binary system, it's two assholes, the Democratic asshole and the Republican asshole, battling it out. It's never one is better than the other, one's spiritual. Sometimes one is worse than the other, but the other one's never better than the other. The other one is just one group sinks to a lower level, which people think the Democrats have, but not now. Like that was before Trump won. But now the Republicans have gotten worse than the Democrats because, they've got Trump arrogance and they think they've won something and they think they're right and all these things. But there's no, you have to be empathetic and you have to look at these people not as who they are, as how bad they suck, but you have to look at them. This is how the masters of the Sajmark system looked at people. You have to see the saint within them and be working to pull that saint out of them, right? And so, that's what a spiritual person would do, not doing these politics. But for him to say empathy is a new age word, it's fucked. And then all these right-wing people want you to have empathy, want the Democrats to have empathy for this piece of shit. But you wouldn't have empathy if, Kamala Harris got assassinated or, any of these, Gretchen Whitmer or somebody or, Gavin Newsom, because your hatred is overwhelming you. Like it's and he's cultivating hatred. Like even though he's talking about loving, whatever, God love, whatever these things, he's, this is all hatred based because it's the idea that the Democrats are the devilish people and the Republicans are the godly people. And it's only because you believe your fucked up religion, which is Christianity is, which is about as much as about devil worshiping as the atheists that are in the scientific atheists that are in the Democratic Party. You have as much connection to God as they do. You talk about God, but you don't feel God, and you don't have a connection for God, and you don't serve God, and you don't work for God. Anyways, so there's that. So YouTube recommended this to me Saturday night. I almost forgot about I forgot about these last two videos. So I have 3 videos about, the shooter.
If there's a shooting at a synagogue, it is very likely to be either a white supremacist or a radical Muslim. If it is a shooting of a Republican politician, it is very likely to be a trans Antifa Marxist shooter.
That is just not true. We don't know what this kid is.
We do know this kid was of the left. We do know that.
We do know what?
That this kid was of the political left. That is according to contemporaneous reporting from The Guardian as well as Tablet Magazine today.
It's 2 days out. We don't know shit, Ben.
But
we don't know shit. They never do.
So if Ben Shapiro comes in and says, we know for sure he was a liberal. And, this is what I'm breaking into with these other 3 reports here.
Internet is undefeated in getting it wrong to begin with.
It's not about the internet. That's about the actual reporting by mainstream accepted. The Guardian is not a right-wing.
Here's what we heard. Here's what I was told so far. And
okay, so I want to make a distinction of what I'm saying here. That, my first thing, and again, I don't give a shit. I don't fucking care about any of this stuff. I know the civilization, by God's will, needs to collapse. I don't like that. not psyched about it, but I know that's the case. And so whatever happens here, you know, I just do my best to be grateful and, you know, whatever. But when I look at something like this and people expect me to have an opinion because people tune into my show, you know, whatever the fuck I'm doing here, because they know I got it right over, you know, I mean, now people are going to come here because, I mean, some of you guys are coming here because I was the first person to say that fucking Trump assassination attempt, I mean, in terms of the people who make content, some of you guys thought the same thing, was bullshit, was Ketchupgate. You know, I coined the terms these things, right? And because I don't give a shit, and, you know, I knew Trump was a piece of shit. Like, I don't vote, there's no political solution. I talked about why that is, right? Extensively. You guys, you know, have heard my thing. But my position here is, who benefits? And if you're going to be honest, Trump totally benefits. Boom. Ericka fucking Kirk, boom. Benefits maybe even more than Trump. She's been made she's got Martyr money and she's going to be a star. Like whatever audience she gains from this thing. She's got 4 million views for that horrific fake fucking thing on YouTube, and then another 4 million views on Instagram, who knows about on TikTok and these things. But she's, you know, she's become a star. Like star like a Kardashian for dumb fuck Christians, right? And so these are the people who benefit. So the liberals aren't benefiting from this. The liberals aren't going to get anything from this Charlie Kirk thing. They're going to get, it's going to be worse for them. And Trump gets to push his agenda. So you have to go with that. Like, you have to look at that as being, who's, like, the people who have motive, right? Like, the Democrats don't have motive. Now, if it's some random fucking kid, but who believes in the official story? Some disgruntled, crazy, radicalized, left-leaning kid. That just doesn't make sense as a narrative. But who believes that? Like, who actually believes the official story? How many people actually believe the official story? It's a small percentage. And so, this...
Tell you what was wrong. First, I heard he's a registered Republican. Not true. Okay. Then he was a donor to Trump. Not true. His father works in the sheriff's office. Not true. There was a picture of him wearing a pro-Trump shirt. Not true. Member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Not true. We don't know what he is. Well, how are you so sure?
Yeah, we know he's a fucking patsy. That's what
or he's of the left. Now, I agree when you write on a bullet, what did he write on the bullet? Catch
this fascist.
Yeah, you don't know he wrote shit on a bullet. You're going with these people saying they caught him and he wrote the shit on the bullet, right?
So a gamer thing.
Okay, but now I'm hearing he may have been part of that group for whom Charlie Kirk was not right-wing enough.
You mean the Groypers, yes. I mean, so that would...
You're sure he's not that?
I'm not sure that he's not that.
A minute ago you were sure what he was.
Hold on.
Okay, so that...
Bill, hold on.
So that was that, right? Like, so he came in and said, I'm sure he was... We know he's liberal, and now he's not, so this guy, fucking... Because, they haven't rolled out the story yet, and even when they do, who can fucking believe the story? Like, you're never going to get the real story here. You never will. Like, all these things. I've seen so many things. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of these reports and stories. Some things like Nancy Pelosi's husband who was, assaulted by his gay lover or something like, we're never going to get the official story, right? Even smaller things that happen. You never get the official story because they don't tell you, they don't tell you the truth about their fucked up things that they do. They don't admit to things. And even if they admit to things, they're liars admitting to things. And so you never get it. Like, you never get it, like I said at the beginning of the video. So this is from Saturday night. They had caught the guy. We had his name in my last video, so over 24 hours before this. And they haven't any new information.
As plans are now set for a memorial for conservative political activist Charlie Kirk. That memorial will be held next Sunday, September 21st at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. That stadium seats over 63,000 people. This new information as investigators in Utah still trying to piece together exactly what led up to Kirk's shocking assassination. Officials say the suspect they have in custody is this man, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. More details have surfaced about Robinson's background, but there are still some key questions about what drove him, a scholarship winner from a close-knit suburban family, to that rooftop where he allegedly fatally shot Kirk. CNN's Danny Freeman is joining us now from Utah. Danny, there are still a lot of people who have a lot of questions about how this happened, why this happened, what this man's motive.
See, you know, the mainstream media has been so compromised. I don't know how many people believe everything they're told about this. So there's already a vacuum where people are then looking for people who believe what they believe to tell them what really happened, right? And so if you're a right-wing person, somehow liberals and their liberal agenda, and, you know, if you're a Fox News person, it's a little bit more less conspiratorial, less out there, but it's still the same thing. And if it's your listening to stuff on the internet and you're a right-wing truther, a QB, you're going to come up with some plot, some Democratic plot. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you're smart, and you're not, if you're one of those people in those groups, you realize who benefits from this, which is Trump, the dude's wife, and Israel. Like, that's right now. Moving forward, we'll see who benefits, but that's, initially, we know Trump immediately benefited from this. And so, you know, the Democrats, what have they gotten from this? Well, how does this help the Democrats, right? It doesn't. Like, she's going to come back stronger than ever. This widow's weeping is going to be heard throughout the globe.
Might have been. What are you learning there on the ground in Utah?
That's absolutely right, Jessica. Still so many outstanding questions about 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, the main suspect in this shooting case right here. He currently is in the Utah County Jail. That's about 250 miles northwest of where we are right now in St. George, Utah, where he lived.
Okay, so I live near St. George when I lived in Utah. So my family and I came back from India, and, you know, we were in India for about 3 years. On and off, you know, in terms of we went back and forth to Sri Lanka and things like this to renew our visas. But we came back to America, and I was in Vegas, which I liked a lot more than I thought I would. And then we moved to Utah, which I really loved. And it's where I met my wife, and we went to so many cool places. You know, I'll show you a picture at the end of this clip of some of the images of the Snow Canyon. They have this great state park called Snow Canyon Park. St. George, Utah is built on a like a mountaintop, and so there's, you know, the valley below, and then on the top of the mountain is this state park. Fucking amazing place. I went there like probably over 100 times in my, you know, we were there for about a year or something, a little over a year, maybe not that. So maybe about 50 times, as many times as I could. There's a great custard place. We used to go there. And then there's the other places, Bryce Canyon and so many other cool places. Pink Coral Desert. There's just, I mean, we didn't get to see all the cool stuff that's out there. But the people there, it's a very passive place, very suburban, low crime rate. At least when I was there, it's growing. A lot of retirement places were being built out there, but a beautiful place. And not the place you'd associate with some assassin, you know, this kid living in some, you know, $1 million house with his rich dad, you know, like,
grew up, where his family lived, and as far as we understand, he's not speaking to authorities at this time, so we've seen investigators here on the ground in St. George really combing over every piece of evidence they can to try and understand what might have driven this young man to, again, commit this shooting allegedly against Charlie Kirk earlier in the week. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do know at this point. Like you noted, Jessica, as far as we understand, he was living a fairly normal life here in St. George in southwest Utah. He was a good student. He was a part of a close-knit family. He got a merit scholarship specifically to Utah State University. He only ended up attending that university for about a semester. Then he ultimately left. He went on to a technical college. He was working to try and study, not overtly political unless prompted. In fact, an electrician who actually worked with Robinson not too long ago said to CNN that he wasn't very talkative unless you talked to him first, and that comes with politics as well.
See, the thing is that where you live, now I can understand, like, I've only been to Chicago a few handful of times, but when I've gone through there, I lost my wallet or driver's or credit card there. My family and I were driving through. And I just don't like it. And New York, I mean, I've been there a lot over my life. And, these cities, these really horrible cities, the places where you want to get out of there as soon as you're, the bad part of the cities, the stressful part of the cities. Washington, D.C., I don't know how people aren't fucking shooting each other all the time. They have this beltway, this loop around the city. And no matter when I've driven in there, I had to go through like hours worth of traffic. I mean, there's just always traffic. Now, I don't know. It's been some years since I've been there. It's probably even worse now. But, you live in these cities and your anger level goes up, the hostility, just there's an energy in these cities. You always have to be on, you're just defensive, and there's aggression, and there's spiritual condition of anger. St. George, Utah is not like that at all. Like, it's just a great place. I would go back there in a heartbeat. Like, my wife and I talk about going back to that area, and there's just a peace there. There's spiritual energy, natural spiritual energy in the land, and it's just wide open spaces, and I mean, again, the population was growing. This is going back, almost 10 years now. But like, it's hard to believe that somebody, again, he played video games, maybe he's on some kind of medication. But it's hard to believe the official story as it is. And some 22-year-old kid would be this upset and this messed up after living the life that he's living, and would go out and just, assassinate somebody like this, right? That, there's things that, people all have thoughts of anger thoughts or violent thoughts, things that you think about but would never do, right? And when you're a young person, you have thoughts of things that you would like to do, but you never would do, right? And so, he had multiple time to, what you're saying is this guy never had any doubts about what he was going to do, up until the point he shot him. As a 22-year-old kid, he never once crossed his mind this is a bad idea. He was climbing up there, and he saw the crowd, and he realized he's looking down he's looking down the scope of his gun, and he's got the guy in his sights, and there's no doubt in his mind, right? I mean, I talk about my daughter's suicide. The thing that I always think about, which I don't, I try not to, but what was going through her mind when she pulled the trigger, right before she pulled the trigger? Like, what made, like you have your hand on the trigger and you're about to shoot yourself. What makes you go through with it? Like, lots of people contemplate suicide and then they back off, right? They don't go through with it. But then later I found out, my other daughter did some research and found out the autopsy revealed she was doing LSD and some other drugs, which she was a very impulsive person. So, that was probably what made it happen. Anyways.
Now, this all despite bullet markings that had memes inscripted on them, also some video game language as well. Investigators still searching for a pinpoint moment, a clear moment that they can look at to say this is maybe what drove him to, again, take that
Okay,
shot.
So the guy's in custody. He's turned himself in, and he's confessed. You don't think they asked him why he did it, right? They don't know why he did it. He's like, I'm going to confess, but I'm not going to tell you why I did it. That's for my future book, right? Like, what do you think's happening here? Like, there's no, this is my motive. When you're confessing, they actually want you to say something like that because they want a motive, because some people confess to things they didn't do, right? You mean he hasn't said it? He's confessed to everything but the motive?
And go and take that shot at Charlie Kirk. I want you to take a listen, though, to what the governor of Utah told Anderson Cooper last night when asked about the question of how this possibly could have happened.
There's so much we still don't know, but certainly there was a radicalization that happened in a fairly short amount of time, and again, that's not too. Sometimes when we talk about
where are you getting that? Like, the kids say he's radicalized. Like, in what way was he radicalized? Left-leaning belief system? Because a left-leaning person, the left is against guns, right? The left-leaning person would be against guns. This guy enjoyed hunting and going out, and he enjoyed his guns with his family. And, they show him catching a fish. He did, he was hanging out with his family still and doing things. So he might have not liked Charlie Kirk, but he wasn't radicalized to the left because he didn't shoot him with tofu, right? like he didn't become a vegan. He did something a right-wing person would be more apt to do, and that is use his, his rifle to kill something, right?
Being radicalized, that's to blame others instead of the person. And I don't want to take away that agency. This person made a terrible decision and will pay.
Okay, so there's this one. So here's a real undoctored picture that I took from Snow Canyon. It's one of my favorite videos. You see that these cool round-shaped baked clay-looking rocks on the left and the right and the mountains in the distance. You can walk up on these rocks. It's just a really cool place. I mean, I got so many good pictures from there. These are just two of my favorite. Here's another one. There's these bushes that look sort of like sage, the sage color. Maybe it is sage. I don't know. But just an amazing place, and so many great pictures and so many great experiences there. And just I really love that place. And so it's the kind of place you go to get rid of stress and. Like you can experience stress anywhere and, whatever it is. But the kind of thing that this kid's being accused of doing doesn't make any sense that, based in all the factors involved, right? So this is Fox News. They have an agenda. Still, they don't have any more information. This was from, I believe, this morning.
Investigators dig into the suspected killer's past. They will try to answer how a young man could be radicalized enough to plan and then commit such a profoundly devastating act. Let's bring in...
Well, he couldn't. It could happen, but it's totally unlikely. That guy just said it all right there. You have a kid who's living a somewhat normal life. He's on video games, on the computer, he's fucked up generation, whatever the fuck this generation is. One of these millennial, these mental, whatever they call them, Z. I don't know what it is, right? But these kids who grew up in the internet, but this family goes and does outdoor things. When you live out in this place, there's so many amazing places to explore. And there's places right near my house, which was, I wasn't in St. George itself. And Zion National Park was half an hour away from where I lived, especially in the off season. It was crowded in the summer, but in the off season was great. And then like I said, these other places. It's just a beautiful place. You go out and there's red rock everywhere and just amazing. And so, people who live out there usually do outdoorsy type of things. This guy looked like maybe he did that. And then, he watched a few fucking powerful liberal. The liberal fucking agenda is so distorted and it's so hard to believe in that he was radicalized in 2 months is what they're saying. He became political 2 months ago and then all of a sudden did this thing. Now, like I said, it could happen, but who's more likely able to pull something like this off? A professional assassin paid by a powerful agency, the American government, Trump supporters, a wife, Netanyahu, Mossad. These are the people that do this kind of thing. Ex-military people who become, paid killers, contract killers, right? Those are the people who would, much more likely be involved in something like this. And so, it doesn't make any sense. And it never will because it's not real. It's just something a story they give to people.
And retired FBI Special Agent Robert Drake.
He's a special agent.
Pardon me. He is also the former chief of the FBI's Counterintelligence Behavior Analysis Program. This is just so difficult to understand how you could come to hate somebody so much who apparently you've never met, that you're willing to take out a rifle and end their life.
Okay, so there's one more thing I want to talk about. You know, I have avoided guns for a very long time. But recently just based on the way the world is going and things, and, my family and I learned, over the past, I don't know, 5-6 years. And, the most important thing and he would get this kid, because he was, hunting and with his dad, who was a religious guy who was also, probably taught him gun safety. And the one thing, we have animals on my farm that come in. We just had a hawk, I think this morning. It might have been the kestrel. But my wife and I were talking by the front door, and our dog Tulsi, she's always eating frogs. We were going around our pond, and we have this big, thick grass. It's not cattails, but it's cattail adjacent. And I saw her jump for a frog and hit her shoulder. I'm like, how could she not be hurt? The grass is very thick. And she stopped suddenly. And she was fine that day, but the next day she was limping. And so she's had some issues. And, this hawk goes by, and we're all standing there, and I see a bird of prey go, diving toward the ground, and then I hear the chickens, the chickens spaz out. They have a lot of, emergency reactions, and we have now guinea hens, which are actually even more reactive. And my wife ran outside. She had her shoes on, and the hawk was already gone. And then, I kept on. I've been making sure, because we had this kestrel, that you have this, the bird of prey. But, the other, we have raccoons here and here sometimes. And sometimes I've had to get raccoons and a possum out of a hen house. And if you decide to shoot the animal, you're going to put a hole in your structure. And where does the bullet go if you miss and or goes through the raccoon? What happens to the bullet, right? And you got to think about these things. It could ricochet and come back and hit you or hit somebody else. What's the flight path of the bullet? And we've had coyotes, but the coyote is comes in, and it's standing right in front of our neighbor's driveway, and you fire a shot at the coyote, and the bullet goes through the coyote and hits the car and the person in the car driving by, right? And so you see these shootouts in city areas where the cops are just unloading on some suspect, and the suspect's firing back, and there's all these NPCs taking fucking strays, right? It's just, it can't happen like that. You can't do things like that. And so if you're going to fire a sniper rifle at this guy, and people are questioning the effectiveness of the scope the guy was using, you're going to hit other people. His kids are over there, right? And so as much as he says he hates this guy, does he hate all the people around him, the bodyguards, the media, people who are there who might not agree with Charlie Kirk, who's debating him? Because it's not like, even if you hit the guy, the bullet might go through him and hit other people. When you do something like this, you're going to hit other people. It happens every time, right? There's always people who catch stray bullets when there's assassination attempts. So, again, you think the kid didn't know that, right? You think the kid doesn't know about, line of sight and line of fire and how these bullets can, if somebody can stand up right at the last minute right in front of Charlie Kirk and catch one, right? And so, he didn't show signs of, according to the story, of being a sociopath. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? That he would bypass all those considerations.
Can you shed any light on that for us, Robin?
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, he fits a pattern, being the killer, a pattern of what we've seen emerging in the last bunch of shootings.
That's a pattern. Maybe it's just it's a pattern that doesn't exist. These kids are being shit out of the system. They're not connected to each other. They're not going to some place to be trained to be these kids, unless they're being trained by the government to be patsies, right?
Years, and that is an arc of violence and insecurities that is being fueled by this new form of online radicalization. Years ago when I thought of online radicalization, I thought of ISIS, but now it's these
another fake group,
fringe groups that are feeling themselves victimized, that they're...
But he's not a part of that group, right? And what about when the right wing does it? What about when someone who was, a Democrat gets shot at or something? What happens with, this whole thing? So like they don't know shit about this, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. And there's no new information. The guys in custody's confessed, and yet they don't know the motive. Like, so the other piece to this, maybe a 22-year-old kid doesn't think about it. Well, here, let's watch this piece.
So Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, reportedly lived with a transgender partner in Utah.
Reportedly.
According to FBI officials.
And this is the same partner that reportedly came forward with messages from the suspect discussing the killing, including the rifle, engraved bullets, and a change of clothes.
Retired FBI supervisor.
Okay, so his transgender boyfriend or girlfriend, he, her, they, them, ratted him out. Like he's shooting Charlie Kirk because he's dating a transgender, but then the transgender rats him out and talks about his stuff that he put on not Rumble, Discord, right? The Discord messages. Which why would he put all that shit up there? And why didn't the transgender say something about the guy before he did it, right? And this is going to hurt transgender community. You know, this is bad. There's going to be backlash. It's not going to help them. And so, like, and why isn't that person charged as an accomplice? So, again, I don't know if this is true or not, and it's Fox News, and this has been going around the conservative outlets. And we'll see if this is validated in some way or not. They said this is a report.
Advisory Special Agent James Gagliano joining us now. You know, we've had this conversation, my friend, about the nexus of information as we continue to unpack this investigation. If you wouldn't mind, is it relevant at all as a data point who this person, this shooter was involved with? Does that...
You know, it's a very conservative place, Utah, and, you know, very strong with the Mormon connection. And that is a very conservative town. And, you know, I mean, how did this happen? It's not a place you would find a lot of they, thems. You know, again, I was there in 2017 or something, you know, left there. 2016, 17. But, you know, just Jesus, right? Like, so I'll look to see if there's anything new. But like I said, looks like they're going to roll this thing out. On Monday, I just looked at the various, you know, the news, and there is a bunch of these reports that are saying this guy had a transgender lover, which will be the centerpiece of the motive, and will be the centerpiece of, you know, like that's, the right wing already hates transgender. I mean, you know this, so you guys don't need to be told this. And this guy was friends with Riley Gaines. You know, Riley Gaines is out there talking about how great this Charlie Kirk is, and the whole traditional family and all these things. His wife has very big hands, by the way. Ericka, I'm not saying anything, just Ericka. Riley Gaines looks a little douche, but you know. But anyways, the right is up in arms about transgenders. And then to have this put on there, it's, you know, the kid would have to know, and everyone would have to know that this is going to blow back on, you know, you do something like this, and there's going to be Charlie Kirk fans and the people that adore him and love him, and there's going to be blowback. Like, if you take an action like this, you know, it's just bullshit story. But anyways, going back to what I originally said, his wife, his president, and his Israeli master are the people thus far benefiting from the Charlie Kirk operation. And then we'll see how this plays out, but, you know, the liberals aren't benefiting at all. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's power bound definitely points to the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.